Yeah, that's a problem with everybody. It's I mean, the OpenOffice has a paid component inside Oracle now. We have their major developers are within Oracle, and then we have Novell supplies some engineering expertise through the guys that used to be with Ximian, that Novell purchased, and then IBM, of course, has their derivative in Symphony, and they offer some back, and the Red Office folks have their derivative called Red Office. And recently, we've had some new derivatives come along, OOo for Kids and OOoLight, through the education group that formed off into EDOC, or EdDoc OO, don't know how to say their name, educoo.org.
Now, have you used OOo for Kids?
I have used OOo for Kids. Actually, I have it on my laptop, my notebook. No, maybe not. But I do have OOLight on here, which just came out.
Can you tell me a little bit about those? I mean, just really brief, high level.
Sure.
Why do I care about OOo for Kids and OOLight?
OOo for Kids, and I can't speak for them. I wasn't part of the development team at all. But the focus of the OOo for Kids came about because the education group, it's a couple of college professors. They started bringing in college students that could work on coding as projects, and what they decided they needed something to actually code on. So instead of actually throwing them into the full-blown OpenOffice code base, they took off a piece and tried to focus it for what if we had 7 to 12-year-olds as our user base. And now we have college kids, so we have college students coding a package for elementary students. And most of it was to cut down on functionality so that it just gave the kinds of things that the children would use in a way that children could, and throw away some of the parts that probably didn't make sense to them. And along with that, they lost the dependencies on Java, went away, because many of the wizards went away. They dropped the base package. Once you don't have Java, you can't have the embedded Java database engine. And then very recently, they've taken the OOo for Kids code line and added to that some of the work that's been going on with the Google Summer of Code work. For example, some enhancements. Johannes Jensen did some work on enhancing the way the math editor worked. And they've rolled that into taking the OOo for Kids base and then rolling in some of these more advanced features again, and they called that the OOoLight. I just did a blog recently on it. For example, a full-blown installation of OpenOffice on your disk will run about 450 megabytes, give or take a little bit. The OOoLight that same installation will go about 240, 250 megabytes. So they've lost quite a bit on the footprint. The folks that have worked on the OOLight would like me to emphasize this is not a replacement for OpenOffice. There are pieces of functionality that are not there. And it's just a piece in the continuum of what, one package may not fit all users. So it's a way of addressing some missing pieces. It's also, there are some fundamental differences between, for example, how the GoOO team, which runs the OpenOffice that most of us will find inside our Linux distributions, has a slightly different take on how to address the engineering efforts. They're much closer to an agile kind of a functionality. Code comes in, it goes into the package pretty quickly. They do QA more on the fly versus the Oracle project, or the mother project, if we will,
yes,
is a much more large system engineering approach where much more formal processes for bringing things in.
Cumbersome, and it is daunting to people who are not already in that system and trying to use it. Referring specifically to the standard OpenOffice bug system. And I'm not saying that it's not appropriate to have that, I'm just saying that it is very common for me to run across a user who finds a bug and says, I want to report this, but I cannot figure out how to do it.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. You hear it on the mailing lists a lot. And you do hear on the from the QA folks on the main project. I think they have a little bit of a hard time understanding that because if you're used to working in large software projects, you need this kind of a system. I mean,
Yes.
because there's a lot of moving parts, and if you don't really pay attention, you can get wrapped around the post pretty quickly. But it is our issue tracking system is probably more complex of a user interface than we need to have for it. And there are some real issues. So compared to, for example, anybody who's worked on Ubuntu and has run into a bug where it just automatically comes up and says, for example, I was working with a Kexi the other day, which is part of the KOffice suite. This is the database manager in the KOffice suite. I tried their brand new beta version of their software because it had kind of gone away for a little while. They just came back to put it back into the suite. And the first thing I decided to try was the Open Document Spreadsheet Import.
Yes.
So I created a SQLite database, and then I wanted to import a sheet from an ODS file. I opened up a sheet that I created with OpenOffice, so it was ODF 1.2, and immediately crashed it. Tried it again, immediately crashed it. In that package, when it crashed, it went into its crash recovery, as OpenOffice does.
Yes.
And the very first thing it did, it came up and it said, I have no significant information to send to the engineers because you don't have the debugging symbols. Would you like to install the debugging symbols? And I said, sure. Went off to the repository, took it a couple of minutes because I'm on broadband. It brought down some replacement binaries for me. All of a sudden I have debugging symbols. So I went back in, I did what I did again, tried to import my ODS file, crashed it. This time it came up and it said, you know what, now I have significant information. Would you like me to report this? And I said, yes. Now OpenOffice does the same thing. And when OpenOffice does not give you the debugging symbols, but it does take it unwinds the stack trace, does a stack trace, and then it mails it to OpenOffice.
Yes.
And that's all it does. It mails it to it, and then it sends you back a tag that says this was report number so and so. And if it doesn't tell you, but if you knew, you could go open up an issue, and in the issue you could say to the engineers, this is the number for the report that was sent in. Well, under Kexi, it works a little differently. It goes to Launchpad, it puts the issue up there, and then it does a search automatically to see if there's any issues that have verbiage that's close to because it asks you what were you doing and whatnot. And then it shows you a list of the open issues, and it says, do you see something here that fits with what you're reporting? And if you do, you don't waste opening up another issue. You just say, this is another. You can either just say, don't do anything, which is already reported, or you could go to that issue and you could add a comment, or you can say, no, this is not there's nothing in here that looks like what I was doing, and so I'll now open my own issue. And it's, I think this is a kind of a really nice tool that would be nice to find a way to get this into the main OpenOffice line. But mostly what I wanted to talk to you about is